Uh, right, so hang on, they're all waiting. Here we go. Everybody's now joining. So I will kick off then. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. We just want to thank you for joining us. And on behalf of Diversity Jobs Group and McArthurGlen Designer Outlets, we are delighted to welcome you to today's webinar, which is focused on well-being and mental health in the workplace, which is an essential conversation that we are proud to be having. We're especially thrilled to be joined by Katryn Taylor, the Northern Europe HR Manager for McArthurGlen, and she will be sharing her insights and experience in building a supportive and inclusive workplace where well-being truly matters. So today is really about raising awareness, reducing stigma, and learning practical ways that we can all prioritise well-being and mental health for both ourselves and those around us. Please do feel free to participate, take breaks if you need, and know that this is a safe and supportive place to kind of talk and get involved. Mental health and well-being can affect almost every area of our life because how we feel emotionally and mentally really impacts on how we function on a daily basis. For example, in work, with your relationships, physical health, your emotional resilience, self-esteem and confidence, daily functioning, financial stability, and personal growth and goals. So I feel that if we can raise awareness, yeah, I know that mental health and well-being is quite a prominent topic, but if we can show and demonstrate ways that McArthurGlen Designer Outlets are supporting their workforce, then I think it'd be a great insight for anybody else whose organisation is looking to implement certain initiatives for well-being and mental health in the workplace. So, Katryn, it is an absolute pleasure to meet with you this morning. I really want to take this moment to say thank you for the expert in well-being, etc. So we shall kick off. Katryn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much, Bernie. Yes, and my name is Katryn. I am the HR manager for Northern Europe at McArthurGlen. So that's Germany, Austria, and the Netherlands. I've been here for about 5.5 years, and I'm also on the Wellbeing project team as well. So I spend a lot of my time looking and talking about wellbeing and seeing how we can enhance our wellbeing offering for our colleagues.
Fantastic, thank you. And obviously, who else asked to join our wellbeing and mental health webinar than such an expert in your field? So I'm really grateful that you've taken the time to join us this morning, Katryn.
Yeah.
So I just want to start off by saying, what does well-being in the workplace mean to you? What initiatives have McArthurGlen Designer Outlets have in place to combat mental health and well-being and any kind of stress-related issues that your employees may have?
That's a great question. I think, as you said in the intro, well-being is really broad. It's not just about physical health. It's not just about mental health. It really spans a huge spectrum, including sort of learning and development, inclusion and equity within the company. So it's really not just one thing that we focus on. But we really have tried hard to build a strong wellbeing strategy, and we try and underpin this throughout all our business and business decisions that we do. One important thing that our colleagues really seem to like is our wellbeing allowance that we have. We offer all colleagues €500 or £500. It might slightly differ depending on sort of country specific rules. And colleagues can use this to do anything that they think would benefit their well-being. So we've had people so I have a gym membership, for example, and that goes towards my gym membership, but we've had other people do sort of meditation apps or music lessons. Someone's told us about guitar lessons that they've done, because it really helps personalize the experience for them, what well-being means to them. And, I must say that we are on our well-being journey. I guess we're not sort of the finished, polished, ready to go. We're always evolving and looking to improve. And an example of this is when this used to be sort of the gym allowance when, years ago, and it used to be, you've got this allowance, put it towards your gym. But, that's not necessarily what many people would consider beneficial to them. So, for some people, they might prefer like meditation, as I mentioned, and more sort of a mental health aspect of it. So it really is for people to take control of their own well-being.
That is an absolutely amazing initiative. I don't know many organisations that do offer that. Yes, I know a lot of companies, they will offer gym memberships, etc. But like you say, it's a broad spectrum, isn't it, with well-being? It's not just about
Yeah.
mental health, it's about physical health, it's about multitude of different things and how it affects your day-to-day life. So looking at giving that allowance to be able to apply it to whatever benefit is going to benefit you the
Yeah.
most and help you is just really absolutely amazing in my eyes. I really think McArthurGlen are onto a winner with that one. I really, really do. So so do you want to just run through those initiatives that you have to support the most common wellbeing challenges that your employees may be facing at work?
Yeah, sure. One thing that we introduced last year is a wellbeing ally. So this is in other companies is maybe called like a wellbeing champion, but maybe I'll discuss a little bit later about sort of what allies mean to us as a company. But we've now got 16 wellbeing allies throughout the group, and people self-nominated for this position. We had quite a few people say that they'd like to do this, but we took careful consideration to make sure we have people in our different countries. We operate on multiple countries, so we made sure that we have, somebody in Italy, somebody in Spain, Germany, etc. And these wellbeing allies are proactive and reactive in what they're able to do in their scope. So they support our wellbeing strategy. So anything that we in the wellbeing team or anything as the business that we want to sort of push out and promote and discuss, our wellbeing allies are really proactive in that and discussing it and encouraging participation in the local teams. They also have sort of specific, so for example, what people want to look at and concentrate on in Germany might be slightly different to our colleagues in Italy. So they're all also, they've got free reign to go and do whatever their colleagues and their teams feel is necessary. But they're also very proactive, reactive, sorry, in terms of if people aren't quite feeling themselves or if people seem to be struggling, people can come to them, and the wellbeing allies can really signpost the colleague onto where they can get more support or better support. So, for example, they had training by Mental Health England. So they've had a day's training on how to deal with all aspects of sort of wellbeing in the workplace and how they can better support people when they come to them and say, okay, I'm struggling with my mental health, and then they'll be able to signpost them onto different areas. But they've done some really cool things. So I think it was our team in Swindon. They championed a technology like a detox for an hour. So everybody in the Swindon outlet, they stepped away from their computers and work phones, etc., for an hour, maybe did a walk and talk, whatever, and really has encouraged everybody to sort of rest the eyes, don't get screen fatigue, and really step away from that. And then we've had our Paris team. They held I think it was yoga and Pilates hour. So everybody in the team went to they've got like an amazing relaxation space, and they had a class there for an hour for Pilates and relaxation. So they were able to step away from the work and just take some time out for them. So they're just a couple examples of the regional activities and initiatives that they have done themselves and that they've championed throughout.
That's fantastic. Could you share with everybody what the step challenges that McArthurGlen are doing?
Oh, sure, yeah. So this is our second step challenge that we're doing. We've got one at the moment, which started on the 5th, which is World Environment Day. And then we did one at the end of last year. That was our first one. And we all have this app. It's led by our on our wellbeing platform, Personify Health. So we all downloaded this app, and you can sign up in teams, and you take some steps as a team and see who is the team that has taken the most steps. So last time it was really successful. We had people, I think we had 220 colleagues participate, which is pretty big. And between them, they stepped, I was included, stepped over, did 50 million steps, which is pretty cool.
A lot. That is a lot of steps. 50 million. Oh,
yeah.
I don't think I'd be alive long enough to take that many steps. Honestly, that is absolutely amazing. Well done. And you're doing it again this year.
Yes, we did. Sorry. So we managed to step over 25,000 miles in that step challenge, and it got really competitive. People, were really keen to win, as you know, as you should be. And then one that started on the 5th. So we've learned along the way. This time we have made the team smaller, so there's 5 people per team, so you really can hold people accountable for their steps. So even yesterday, my colleague was in the office and said, I'm going out for lunch, and I did say, you know, when you go for lunch, make sure you walk the long way around to get your sandwich, and then they came back and they said, yeah, I even took the stairs instead of the lift today. So it's really cool, because it's encouraging people to, you know, get competitive, which, you know, comes quite naturally to many. But also it just encourages people to be more active, take more steps, and also sort of there's a bit of a buzz in the areas in the office, and every morning it's quite exciting to look at the leaderboard and see where you're coming. My team is currently coming 12th. I was a bit cocky at the start. Well, we started out, and I did say to the HR team, you know, guys, our team's actually in 7th place. We're doing really well. We're in 12th now, still strong position, but yeah, so it's good, healthy competition. I'm enjoying it so far.
I think that's an absolutely amazing challenge, because like you say, it's not just about building a team and being competitive, because everybody is competitive regardless as to whether they will admit it or not. The majority of us will be competitive in some way or another, but it also it goes towards physical health as well as, you know, mental and well-being. And I just think that's great, and it builds a great team atmosphere. It's very team building, and I just think, yeah, that's a great initiative that you have in place. I might have to put something like that in place for Diversity Jobs Group. Make sure we all do a certain amount of steps per day, just to even get like the step numbers up, because I can tell you I don't do more than 2,000 steps a day, which is shocking. I know I should be sent to the headmaster for not doing as many steps, but you know, definitely. I'm just so busy, and then come the evening, it's just like I'm too tired. Okay, so
that's the thing though, Bernie, we have to make time for our well-being. I think we just don't prioritize it enough. You know, even today, you know, you say, oh, I'm so busy, I'll get round to whatever. So actually something on that was something that we do proactively put in our calendars, like a no meeting hour at 12 o'clock. Yeah, so as an HR team, we sort of put that every day, 12 o'clock, no meeting hour, so it blocks it out. So ideally people still then don't put meetings in, and then you've got that hour to, you know, step away, go for a walk, have your lunch or whatever, but really take that time away from the desk. And also we do Wellbeing Wednesdays. I think it's the last Wednesday in every month, just as a team. Make sure that you don't book any meetings Wednesdays. I think it's like 2 till 4 or something, and then we take that time for our well-being. So if, just like you've said, I'm too busy, I hadn't had an opportunity to do X, then take that time out, really be accountable for your own well-being in that moment.
That is a really, really good advice, Katryn. Thank you. And I will try my utmost to make time. I mean, I do take time out and I walk my dogs, etc. So I do take a bit of time. However, you know, it's just as soon as you walk back in the house, it's like a load of chores to do, a lot of stuff to do.
Hard,
it is. I mean, not even weekends these days are relaxing. They're just catching up on everything that you haven't got a chance to do during the week. So I love that idea. Absolutely love that idea. No meeting hours, Wellbeing Wednesdays. That is something I think a lot of companies should implement. And I hope that many viewers that are watching this are taking notes and hopefully going to make this suggestion to their own line managers, or, you know, within the business, because I think that is really, really valuable, because you are giving yourself that time to step away and not be overwhelmed by the amount of work that you got, and you are putting yourself first, because let's face it, well-being should be your first and foremost priority, because if you're not looking after your well-being, then you are going to eventually get burnout, you know. And you know, I work like a Trojan, or as do all of my colleagues, and I'm sure you do as well. So I think that would be something that I will take to the business as well, and say, look, let's have a no meeting hours. I have recently just started to say, right, I'm not going to have any meetings on a Friday, just so I can catch up on everything that I've been doing during the week. But that doesn't always work out to be the case, because some of our partners can only meet on a Friday. So, you know, it's just balancing it all out, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
So okay, what would you suggest for employers then to break the stigma around well-being in cultures or communities where it's still a taboo subject?
I mean, it is a taboo subject, you're right, especially around the mental health space. And I
Yeah,
think the most important thing companies can do is just start the conversation.
yeah.
And what we have done in October, we focused or did focus last year on women's health, and on in November we focused on men's health and supported Movember. But for women's health, for example, we focused attention on menopause. And what we organised was a webinar where we invited Bupa to come and talk to us about what is menopause, what does that mean for us, who does it affect, how can we help and support people going through the menopause. And that was it. It was a good take up. It was very informative. But then we had a second webinar, which is internal, which I facilitated with a panel of 4 people talking about the menopause. And it was a great panel, really, really great conversation. But the best thing about it was that we had a senior male on the panel.
Wow.
And he was brilliant. He really spoke openly about his wife's journey with the menopause, how he perhaps wasn't very supportive at the start, didn't really understand what it was that he needed to be doing, and then he sort of gave us a really open and honest approach and what that meant for him. And because it was a male, actually, when I was organising, I did say to somebody, "Oh yes, I've got this chap on," and they said, "Oh, that's so funny. You know, what on earth are you going to say? That's nothing to do with him." But actually, when we talked about it and we opened up, it is to do with everybody.
Oh yeah.
And we had some teams were watching it in their teams on Teams, on the call, and the males who were watching, they sort of contacted us afterwards and say, it's great that we were able to talk about it, because then they feel that they're able to talk about it, and then people therefore know that they've attended, and they can say, "Oh, did you see that? I'm thinking that I want to go and do X," and then that manager or that male can be a lot more supportive and a lot more understandable. So I think it's really important to break the stigma, and the best thing to do is to start the dialogue and just to keep that discussion going. And as an example, I said to one of my colleagues, "Can you help me? Can you advise on, where you're at with menopause, how you've been supporting some people?" And they said, "Oh, we don't actually, in this area of the business, don't have anybody who'd be going through the menopause." And I said, well, let's have a look at the stats. This is sort of the age range. These are the people it would affect. And even to them, it was a bit of an eye opener to think, actually, I hadn't really thought about it, because in my head, menopause, what it traditionally meant was something else. So I think you don't necessarily know what you don't
No.
know in this space unless you just start speaking about it.
Definitely. I 100% agree with you. Menopause is one of those topics that people think that they know what it is or what to expect with it. But until you're actually going through it, you don't realize the impact that it has on every aspect of your life. And, it's not just happening to us as women, but it has an impact on the husbands and on the children and in your family dynamics as well. Because, the symptoms of menopause can vary in severity. Some women may not struggle with any symptoms. Other women have severe symptoms. Like myself, I've been on HRT now since 2005. I went through the menopause when I was 37. And it just seems to be an ongoing. And anytime I try to come off the HRT, all my symptoms come straight back. And it's a case of it really does affect, because my main symptoms are having the real bad hot flushes, and they usually affect me when I'm trying to sleep at night. So then I'm up all night trying to deal with these hot flushes, which then disturbs my husband, and he then has a lack of sleep, and then it impacts his work. And again, when my children are younger, because they were much younger then, 20 years ago, so it did affect them, because you do have mood swings, you do. And I just don't think people realize the actual impact it has on the whole family and your whole life, really. And a doctor will say, "Yeah, take this tablet and you should be okay." But for those who don't want to take that tablet and they want to go through it naturally, it's understanding the symptoms, the issues that it can have in the family dynamic, as well as anybody that you interact with, because you might be on a really bad day and snap. And again, so that does actually affect well-being. It's like back in the 80s, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder quite severely, but there wasn't a great deal of support out there. I was sent to some counselling, which was a group session counselling, and then I had a bit of one-on-one. But you know, to be honest, in my thought process at the time was, this isn't helping me. This is only causing me to remember things that I had blocked out and didn't want to remember, because that's the thing with post PTSD is you block things out in your head so that you can forget about them because they're so traumatic. And then you get flashbacks and stuff. And that's what I found, that some of the counselling, or the method of the counselling that I was provided with, it brought back so many memories, and I was having so many flashbacks, and it was really, really affecting me. I know how to deal with this now, and you know, and it still does affect me to this day. However, knowing how to cope with it and how to overcome those flashbacks, which usually affect me as I'm falling asleep, so I have to jolt myself up, open my eyes, because you know, I heard many years ago that if you're having like a flashback or any kind of bad dreams or bad thoughts, just wake yourself up, open your eyes, get up, walk around to distract your mind. And that can happen 3, 4, 5 times in the night, where you know, a dream and it will bring back memories. Or even when you're just trying to fall asleep, you've got all these flashes coming through your head of images of things that happened to you, and it, you know, it can be really, really destroying to your mental health, your physical health, and every aspect. So yeah, but the only problem that I found with that was the stigma. There was always that stigma. If you went to the doctors because you were having women's problems, it's because you got PTSD. If you went to them about something, it's you've got PTSD. So that was always the biggest issue that I found, that you would be told by a GP or a health specialist, it's because you have PTSD, which is one of the reasons why it's something that I rarely raise or talk about what my experience, just because of that simple fact. And even when I visit the doctors, I never raise that subject, because I know as a woman, I'll be seen as a woman, I'll be seen as neurotic, and I'll be seen as the fact that it's a mental health thing. So it's, you know, it's still something that needs to be destigmatized in my eyes. So
and normalized, I guess, in every way. And you know, sorry, go on.
No, go on, it's okay.
Just that you mentioned that it's, you know, you seem to be pigeonholed into, you know, this is because you're a woman. I think on the flip side, men also feel very similar to that, in terms of, you know, they don't talk about their mental health, and if they do, it can be seen as, you know, just a bit of a lad, or you brush it off and you don't really understand, and people don't really sort of ask how you are or really take it very seriously. And
great.
What we did in November, I think last year, we had, similar to the menopause panel, we had one for, it called a Let's Talk session. And we had 2 very powerful discussions, actually, of senior men in the company, and one of them talked about mental health and the effects of sort of stress, and how that had affected him, and then how he had dealt with it, and then what support we were able to provide. And he really spoke openly, and I think we don't necessarily, just as you said, we don't talk about it enough. And I think especially, you know, being a man and the stigma around that turned out to be a very powerful session, that we were able to then ask questions at the end. You know, no question was off limits. And we also had a second senior man talk about a cancer diagnosis earlier on in his life. And again, so open and honest. And, you know, not many people know about that, that he'd gone through that. And, you know, he was just saying, it's great that we can talk about it, and it's great now that you know about this about me, and it's just another level to me. And then after that, we get other people contacted, say, well, actually, you know, if you do need somebody for next time, I'd love to speak to you about X. But this would only happen once you start the dialogue and start the conversation.
Exactly. And, and I think the more that we can open up and talk about things, the easier it will be for others in similar situations to feel like they're not going to be victimized or persecuted, because, there is so much stigma around it. And it's shocking that it's still like that in this day and age,
Yeah.
where, we are living modern days with all these new kind of health incentives or inventions. They found cures for certain cancers and stuff like that. So being able to talk about it, and the fact that that gentleman, he was able to then talk about what he went through with his cancer, and then volunteering to then be a speaker the next time.
Yeah.
It just opens it, because men, like you say, they find it hard. Women are more open than men, is as a rule. They just are, and they will openly talk about certain things. I'm probably more of a closed book in that aspect, but there are many men out there that I think struggle with their own well-being, their own mental health, whether it's post-traumatic stress, veterans, for example, what they go through whenever they see traumatic things, if they've been out to the Middle East or wherever. It's just really making sure that people feel safe, and, like I say, not victimized, not persecuted, not pigeonholed, like you say. Oh, you've got mental health, or you've got PTSD, or your well-being is not where it should be.
Yeah.
It needs to be addressed so that people feel safe and comfortable to be able to express their experience and how they're feeling, without being made to feel, oh, because what it used to be like was, oh, they've got mental health. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. And I really, really love the initiatives that McArthurGlen have got. So, okay, let's talk about all the other practices that you kind of have, because I know that you do encourage speaking to line managers and your EAP, etc. So do you want to just share a bit more about those with us?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, we do have an EAP, an employee assistance program, and this is an area, it offers sort of free confidential advice. You can have counselling sessions with a counsellor, I think sort of 6 sessions, and it's in your local language. So as I mentioned at the start, we have outlets throughout Europe. So for example, some of my German colleagues, they could call the specific German number and they could speak to somebody, and they could have their sessions in their local languages. So that's really helpful. And also there's an area for sort of financial advice and maybe some legal advice as well on that platform. And we have found that the take up can vary at maybe different times of the year. But if somebody does come to me and say, I'm slightly overwhelmed, or this has gone through, I've just gone through this period of my life, I've had a bereavement, then that, one of the first things I'll say is, look, when you're ready, when the time's right, we do offer this EAP. I can personally recommend it myself. And yeah, it's another way to feel supported and to really break down anything in your mind that you want to discuss.
I love that it's all done in local languages as well. Because there's nothing worse when there's a language barrier and you're trying to express something, but the person listening doesn't really understand, and it can be misconstrued, really,
especially when it's so personal, because what you're discussing can be very heavy. And actually, just on that, we also offer parental coaching for people who are going on maternity leave, or we have in Austria particularly, people can be on maternity leave for sort of up to 3-ish years. We offer it for when they come back from their leave of work. I had it myself. I had a daughter, she's 3 next week. Before, she's a terror. But before I went on leave, they offered this parental coaching. I think I was maybe the guinea pig as it was first being launched. And I did have a lot of anxieties throughout that time. I was thinking, I only know how to put my career first. How am I going to be able to put a child? Where does my child fit into that? What if I come back and I'm rubbish at my job? What if I've forgotten everything? Or what if the person who does my mat cover is much better than me? So all these things going around in my mind, how do I show them I'm still really committed to my job? But then I was offered this parental coaching. I had 3 sessions. A session before I went on maternity, where I said exactly this, like, just verbal diarrhea of everything I was feeling. And the expert who I spoke to, she was brilliant and really sort of broke it down to me and really gave me helpful practical tips on what I can do. And then just before I came back from maternity leave, we talked about how I was feeling and sort of the anxiety of returning. And then when I returned, it was a little overwhelming in general, to be honest, because I'd spent a whole year just doing baby stuff and baby groups, which is fun in isolation. But when you come back, my mind especially was elsewhere. And so this session really helped me to put it into, bite-sizable chunks. Now I'm back. What does that mean? How can I reintegrate myself? And of course, it's really important. At the time I spoke to my manager and I was like, right, so much has changed in the year. How are you going to support me, catch me up, etc.? So the parental coaching we also do in local languages as well.
Yeah.
And that's, I think that's something I personally have really benefited from.
That is absolutely amazing. I could use somebody like that on a Sunday night. Every Sunday night, I have this. I suffer from imposter syndrome a lot, and on a Sunday night, I sit there, even though I may have been logged on doing some work, etc., over the weekend, because I'm notorious for doing that in the evenings as well. But then come a Sunday night when I know I'm not logging on a Sunday, I'm having that day of rest, and then Sunday night, it's that panic again, thinking, do I know what I'm doing? Am I doing everything right? Do I recall what I'm doing? Do I remember how to do this? So having somebody, that would be just amazing for me, just to give you that reassurance. Yes, okay, this is how you were doing it, Bernie. This is and just to give me that reassurance, knowing that I'm not an imposter. I'm by no means an expert in any field, but I do my best. So, and I think that's all I can do, really. And I have to really catch myself on and check myself every Sunday night. It's like, no, you know what you're doing. You'll as soon as you get back, get ready for work and sit at your desk, then it will just come second nature to you. But it's still always having that in my head every single Sunday night. And I don't think that will ever leave, unfortunately. I wish it would, but I don't think it's going to.
But if you work for McArthurGlen in Northern Europe, I would say to you, I'd say get in touch with the EAP and air these frustrations, see if somebody can talk to you about it, and they'll talk to you about the processes and how best to deal with it. And after these 6 sessions, if you then hopefully would see some change that's happened throughout the time of your sessions. So that's what I'd be
come and work from McArthurGlen. Didn't say that, everybody. But yeah, no, that's really, really, really good. So I think we've covered all the different initiatives. So like your encouragement, I love that there's so much encouragement within McArthurGlen to speak to line managers and to share your concerns and your worries, and that there is so much support within the business for your staff members, because that is one of the things I think that affects so many people across the world, that they just don't realize maybe that they have possible issues or concerns that are being expressed without them realizing they're expressing. Because when you are suffering or struggling with well-being or mental health, you do naturally express something. There's something that you naturally outwardly express without realizing it. People can see that person is struggling with their well-being. And so and I just love all these great initiatives that you've got, especially this no meeting hour. I'm going to have to implement that. And your employee assistance program, your step challenges, the fact that you've got 16 well-being allies as well across the board is they can speak to individuals in their own native language, just speaks volumes. It really, really does. And I think McArthurGlen really stand out from the crowd when it comes to supporting employees with well-being and mental health. So I don't know if anybody's got any questions, but do please feel free to put any questions that you've got in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer. We may not know the answer exactly, but we can catch up with you afterwards and perhaps look at finding the answer for you. But is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Katryn, with regards to McArthurGlen?
Yes. So one of the things we do is a survey, like a pulse survey, and one of the
Okay.
ones we did was on a wellbeing pulse survey. So that really enabled us to understand, what are we doing well, what's working well, and what would be even better if. So I really, think that's important for a company to really understand. There's one thing saying, yeah, we need to do better wellbeing in the company. Let's give everybody a piece of fruit on a Monday, and it's a tick.
Yeah.
It's really important that actually, if you want to focus on well-being, that you really embed it into, your policies, your practices, your leadership, your culture, really everything across the board. So the pulse survey that we did actually enabled us to really look at the initiatives, really look at where we want to focus on. And we actually have affinity groups throughout our company, so that we have 4 affinity groups. And they were set up to really be the voice between the colleagues and our people, and really the communication of the people, and voice it up to our leadership and executive teams. So 4 of them include, we've got one on families, which really centers around sort of caregivers, families, parents. We've got one diversibility, which really focused on our inclusion, equity, and diversity, and how we can be a lot more I&D focused and aware, and how we can improve as a company. We have Proud, which we at the moment, actually, they've just launched our initiative for supporting Pride this year. So it's for our LGBTQ plus community and allies, of course. And then our latest one is Gender Balance. So really looking at our practices and our policies and seeing how we can improve. So it's the voice of our people, a voice of our colleagues, that people can join these allyships, these areas, and then really tell us, what they're looking for and how we can help. So from that, we have been able to, we've just very recently, this is hot off the press, we have got a enhanced parental leave policy. Yes, so we're now offering enhanced parental leave for partners to be able to take. So this has come off the back of one of the affinity groups, their initiative, and then run through the policy, etc. by them. What do people want to see? What is possible from a business side? So that's really been helpful, and has really encouraged people to be a lot more open and honest, and really but help us to become a better employer by listening to the voice of our people.
You've definitely taken all the right steps, and with having the enhanced parental leave, that actually falls in line with what I saw on the news this morning, where men are hoping and wanting to be able to extend their the paternity leave, basically, because at the moment they only get 2 weeks, and whereas a woman can have a year. I know there is the option in some organisations for the women to swap places with the men and then be at home and take that maternity leave, and women come back to work. However, I think it is important that both parents are supported with it, within the business, because at the end of the day, children are the future generations that are going to be running the country in one way or another. So it's important that those bonds and relationships are developed within a good period of time, because you're missing out on so much, like especially for men. They're missing out, just having the 2-week parental leave. They are missing out. And I recall when my children were born, my husband, he would go to work back in the 80s, 90s. He was only allowed to have 2 or 3 days, and he was heartbroken after having to go back to what, after a couple of days, because he didn't get to spend that much time with his son as a newborn baby, because work called him back, because their policy was 3 days maximum. And I just found that to be so unfair. So I love that idea that you've got the enhanced parental leave. I really, really do. And I just really think that McArthurGlen, I know I've said this a few times now, but you really are leading the way with regards to what you're doing with supporting employees across the board, not just for wellbeing and mental health, but, like for the parental leave and all the other initiatives that you got, health, with your step challenge and stuff like that. It is really something to admire. It really is. And it's been so useful learning more about the initiatives that McArthurGlen have got in place. So is there anything else that you would like to share with us, or do you think we've covered everything?
We've covered quite a lot, actually. That's gone quite quickly. Just mainly that it's just really important that we listen to people, we take it seriously, we embed it throughout the company. And yeah, as I said before, that it's not just something we say, yeah, well-being tick, we've done that. And it's absolutely in everything. So it's not just about taking your steps, and it's not just about having a counsellor. It's about having the right management in place, or giving the manager support. I actually went through a bit of a tough time last year. I opened up to my boss, who's male, and he was like, right, what do you need? How can I help? Time off, or give me some work. Let's help reprioritize. That is well-being. That is just what I needed. And, that made me help and deal with the situation quicker. Really, really felt supported from him. And then when I was ready to return full force back to work, I was, motivated and happy again that I've been really taken seriously, listened to, cared for. So it's, whilst these initiatives are brilliant, absolutely, it's the fundamentals, the basics also that we've got to make sure that we get right as well, that you've got the right support network in place, that you feel that you can speak to your line manager. And if you can't, we've got the wellbeing allies. But if your wellbeing ally in that area is your boss or your colleague that you don't feel comfortable, then we've got the information to say, okay, well, this is the wellbeing ally in Salzburg you can speak to, or this is one of the ones in London head office, for example. So really making sure that support is there. So we really are making sure that everybody feels heard, listened to, supported, and then able to get back on track, or whatever they need.
That's really, really good, because not some people just don't want to talk to their line manager about a certain problem, and they want to take it somewhere else, because sometimes if you talk to a line manager, they might not be as willing to listen or understand. I mean, I know I've had that in the past myself. A line manager who thinks banter's the way forward, and it just really, I would end up having to go to HR and say, look, I need to talk to you about this. Because I just couldn't talk to my line manager at the time. And don't get me wrong, he was a great person, but he was still not the sort of person that you could take an in-depth personal issue to, because for a fact that he would probably make a joke about it in the middle of the office. I mean, we're going back to the 90s and noughties here, so things have progressed since then and improved. But yeah, I love that idea that if you don't want to speak to your line manager, you can take it up with, so like you say, Salzburg or HQ in London, etc. So that is absolutely it's got to be reassuring to your employees, sorry. But yeah, okay. Well, I think we have absolutely covered everything. If nobody's got any questions, then we will come to an end with this webinar. But I really want to give you a heartfelt thank you, Katryn, for your amazing insights to the initiatives that McArthurGlen have implemented. And I would like to thank everybody for joining us this morning. It really was a pleasure to have you all here. It's invaluable to know that, or it's important to know that if we can break that stigma with whether it be well-being, mental health, PTSD, or whatever it is, that we need to talk about it more. We need to raise that issue, or those subjects, just so that people feel more comfortable, and those around you will also, people won't admit to, I don't have mental health, or I don't have issues, well-being issues, or I'm not struggling in this area, I'm not struggling in that area. But actually they probably are, but they just don't want to admit it. I know I'm one of those ones that will rather fight through than say I need help, because that's just the way I am. And a lot of women do that as well, don't get me wrong, and a lot of men do as well. I'm not going to segregate the women, but we're all guilty of trying to push through without asking for help. So like I say, it is really, really important that we remind ourselves that mental health and well-being is not just something we talk about one day a year. It's something that we live with and manage every single day. So while the challenges may differ from person to person, the need for empathy and understanding and support is universal. And we need to obviously, keep talking about it and keep, pushing for people to look. If you feel like you're in a situation where you need to talk to somebody, then there are channels and options available for you. So yeah, I hope everybody's able to take away what they've heard today and maybe implement it into your own workplace. If there's candidate job seekers that have joined us, then you know, it would be interesting to understand from your perspective how you found the information that Katryn has shared with us today, because any small changes make big ripples. Let's face it, you know, it's just like throwing a stone in a pond and the ripples just follow out. So the more we can talk about it, the more I think everybody around us will be more open to talking about it. But I really do want to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you, Katryn, for your time and your valuable insights and sharing the initiatives that McArthurGlen have got in place, because it really sounds like a wonderful organisation to work for.
Thank you for having me, Bernie. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you all so much for joining. And I hope you all have a lovely, lovely day. Okay. I will speak to you soon. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.